All right. Happy Sabbath. Today is January 7, 2017. And we will continue on the French Revolution. Last week we started, and you can see this on the video from last week. But last week we were starting with how the French Revolution ties in with the American Revolution, right? Yeah. How it ties with the American Revolution. Okay. Because as one kingdom goes down, another kingdom will rise, right? Is the rise and fall of kingdoms. So as the fifth kingdom goes down, which is Papal Rome, the sixth kingdom will rise, and that's, and we already studied from Revelation 18, that's United States. So France is the one that brought down the papacy, the sixth kingdom, and that's when America rises. So the rise and fall of France also typifies the rise and fall of United States. Okay, all right. Now let me go to here. So we'll go. I'll just briefly review what we did. We did last week. This is pretty interesting here. This the American Revolution basically started in 1773 with the what here? This is a picture of what?
Boston.
The Boston Tea Party. And that Boston Tea Party was on December 16, 1773. And what were they protesting about? Taxation, right? Was there a problem with taxation during the time of the French Revolution? Oh yeah, they had a big time problem with taxation. The American Revolution was also had a issue with taxation. And the American Revolution's beginnings started in 1773. All right. What happened in 1773 also in Europe? Persecution almost wholly ceased. Why? Because the order of Jesuits was abolished in 1773. Remember that? Yeah. Paul Revere, his famous Boston ride was on April 18 to April 19 at 1775. And all these happened at midnight. This happened at midnight, this happened at midnight. April 19, 1775 was when the American Revolution started. Right? 1773 is significant because of the abolishment of the order of the Jesuits. April 19, right? Yeah. April 19 is, what is April 19? The disappointment. Yeah, the time of the disappointment. Right? So there's a lot of things that if you like numbers and like to see if there's things are connected, well, there's multiple dates and numbers that you can connect with a prophecy of the Millerites, what happened during the time of the Millerites. Okay, now we'll move along to this slide right here. How many presidents were there before George Washington? I already told. Basically, we're going to say that George Washington is we're always taught that George Washington is the first president of the United States, right? Remember when we took our citizenship? What have we have to study American history and the first president is George Washington, right? Was he really the first president?
No.
He wasn't really the first president. He was the first president under the U.S. Constitution. But before that, they had the Articles of Confederation. And in that Article of Confederation, how many presidents did they have?
6. No, they have 10.
They had 10 presidents.
We already studied that.
Right?
It's already
Skip that.
They had 10 presidents.
Yeah.
it was not under, because this was not under the U.S. Constitution. This is not under the present U.S. Constitution. This was under the Articles of Confederation. They had presidents. So what does that mean? Is that symbolically significant? So there's 10 presidents before the first president. So what do you think is going to happen to the last president? If this is the beginning of America, there's 10 presidents before the first president. What do you think is going to happen at the end? Because it's going to be a chiastic mirror. There's going to be a 10 followed by the last president, right? What is the 10 presidents or the 10 kings that represents after the last U.S. president? United Nations. Because the United Nations is going to take over the world, and America is going to, it's no longer going to be the superpower that it has been, right? Right. So that's the significance. That, can you imagine, you know, just seeing that the beginning of America is going to typify the ending of America, right? I like this John Hancock right there. I like his signature. I put that big signature right there. Because these four also signed the I think these four also signed the Declaration of Independence, or maybe the Constitution. These four signed the Constitution also, right? But anyway, that's just an observation. Doesn't mean anything really. But I just happen to like that handwriting, you know. Put your John Hancock. That means your signature, right? Yeah. Okay. So there's 10 presidents before George Washington became the first president. And what was George Washington's title during the American Revolutionary War? What was he actually? Well, he actually was a general. But what was his official title? Commander-in-Chief. Now, why is that significant? Because Napoleon was also a commander-in-chief, and obviously they were military powers. So at the end time, the American president will become a dictator like Napoleon, right? And then he is going to force the world to follow after the beast, right? There's going to be a dictator. And you know what? We already elected that dictator. Pretty amazing. Pretty amazing. And the United States Constitution was first written in 1787, right? 1787. Okay. All right. And let's see, I'm going to just jump down to, I think, 102 right here. Oh, all right. What happened in 1798? They started turning around the U.S. Constitution. How? By having an Alien and Sedition Act. You know, in 1787, they had a U.S. Constitution guaranteeing all the rights of the of the American citizen with the Bill of Rights and all this. And in 1798, what did they do? There was a war, okay? And during that war, it's an emergency. So what do we have to do? Now they were fearing that aliens living in the United States would sympathize with the enemy, being the French. So they raised the residency requirements for citizenships from 5 to 14 years. They made it more difficult for aliens to become U.S. citizens, right? And authorized the president to deport all aliens, permitted their arrest, imprisonment, and deportation during wartime. Now, is this something like what the U.S. Constitution would guarantee? So what were they doing? In 1798, they're already starting to undermine the U.S. Constitution, right? Yeah. And the Sedition Acts makes it a crime for American citizens to print, utter, or publish any false, scandalous, or malicious writing against the government. It takes away your freedom of speech.
That was done under John Adams.
1798. Can you imagine that? The U.S. Constitution was the strength of America. That's how America becomes powerful. That's the secret of her strength. And there it's being undermined. Wow. Okay, that's where we left off last time. And is the U.S. Constitution a principle that is supported by the papacy?
No,
Absolutely not.
they don't like it.
The papacy writes it down that if you guarantee the freedom of conscience, it is heresy. And heresy is punishable by death, according to Pope Pius IX or something like that. I can't remember now. It's from last week, right? The papacy hates the French Constitution, which is based on the American Constitution. So anything that starts taking away from the freedom of the people for religious freedom, freedom of speech, freedom of consciousness, is going towards the papal, what the papacy would actually endorse. It's actually endorsement of papal policy. Okay. So anytime we see our Constitution, the United States Constitution, being undermined, it's actually a step towards what? The Sunday law. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Okay, all right. So let's continue. Hey, wait a minute. Maybe I should put this audience tools just in case somebody wants to ask a question. Yeah. Well, we didn't have anybody last week, but who knows? Maybe this week we'll have somebody. All right. Anybody have a question, okay? Yeah, make sure you ask. All right. So we'll continue. All right. This is something that was already brought up last night. You know, in 1888, this is written by Ellen White in the first Selected Messages, Book 1, Volume 1, page 68. Had Adventists, after the Great Disappointment in 1844, held fast their faith and followed on unitedly in the opening providence of God, receiving the message of the third angel and the power of the Holy Spirit, proclaiming it to the world, they would have seen the salvation of God. They would have seen the salvation of God. The Lord would have wrought mightily with their effort, and the work would have been completed. And Christ would have come earth to receive his people to their reward. Christ would have come in those times if they were actually faithful and doing and proclaiming the third and the fourth angel's message. But the problem is they weren't, right? They used to be in the Philadelphia condition, and within just a few years, actually, within a matter of 3 or 4 years, they became Laodicea, right? And Ellen White wrote that very specifically, that they became Laodicea already, all right? But Jesus could have come back then. Now, when was it that the fourth angel's message was given? During the time of the Millerites, right? Anybody know? Yeah, 1888. How do you know that?
Oh, that's the Exeter.
Not Exeter.
Exeter, the righteousness by
Minneapolis.
Minneapolis.
Right, Minneapolis General Conference. Okay. Yeah. So you know what? For Jesus to have to come, you have to have the certain conditions, right? Have to be there. Well, you've been preaching the first and the second and the third angel's message. But also you have to preach the fourth angel's message, right? Jesus can't come unless you preach the message of the Revelation 18, which is the fourth angel's message. It's impossible. You have to be able to. So the fourth angel's message have to come. If Jesus would have come at that time, then the fourth angel's message should have come, right? Did it come? Yes, in 1888. Okay, where can you prove that? Well, this is the picture of them at the Minneapolis General Conference. You know, back then, this little building is all it took to hold everybody. Now, it's like a big football stadium to hold the General Conference.
Wait, that was the general conference?
That's the General Conference in 1888. We've come a long ways, all right? This is in 1888. And what is famous about that time period? Okay, here he goes. An unwillingness to yield up preconceived opinions and to accept this truth lay at the foundation of the large share of the opposition manifested at Minneapolis, right? 1888 General Conference, against the Lord's message through Brethren E.J. Wagner and A.T. Jones, right? Now the fourth angel's message, how many angels' messages are there in the first, the fourth angel's message? It's a combination of it's the first and the second angel's message. So there's like two angels coming down at that time. It's like Wagner and Jones giving a message. Because an angel's message is a message, right? And here are the two messengers that gave it.
So not like angel coming down.
Yeah, it represents like an angel coming down giving a message, right? By exciting that opposition, Satan succeeded in shutting away from our people, in a great measure, the special power of the Holy Spirit that God longed to impart to them. The enemy prevented them from obtaining the efficiency which might have been theirs in carrying the truth to the world. As the apostles proclaimed it after the day of Pentecost, the light that is to lighten the whole earth with its glory. Which angel lightened the whole earth with its glory? That's the Revelation 18 angel, right? That's the fourth angel's message. So at this time, 1888, during the Minneapolis General Conference, was when the message of Revelation 18 angel that lightened the whole earth with its glory actually came down. But what had happened to that message? It was resisted. It was rejected. And by the action of their own brethren has been in a great degree kept away from the world. So, okay, Jesus could have come. The fourth angel's message was being given. All right. What else is needed? Okay, yeah. All right. Let me just put it on a timeline here. 1798. There's this 1888. Okay. This is in our timeline here. This is we know is when the fourth angel's message is given, right? The fourth angel's message is the combination of the first angel's message and the second angel's message. All right. What else would have come? You know, then we go, where's the history of Islam here? You know what?
1888.
But they rejected it. They reject the fourth angel's message. All right. What other thing would have happened here? You know, what do you need for the events to happen such that Jesus would come? Okay. The church has to be Laodicea, obviously. The message given us by A.T. Jones and E.J. Wagner is the message of God to the Laodicean church. So we have a Laodicean church, all right? Obviously we know that. Right? It's just here. Ellen White says that it is a Laodicean church. And woe be unto anyone who professes to believe the truth, yet does not reflect to others the God-given race. What is this? Who profess to believe the truth, yet does not reflect to others the God-given race. What is that? That's the fig tree. That's the fig tree right there. So the fig tree is a what? Is a Laodicean church. right? Yeah, that's the fig tree right there. This is the leaves, and this is the lack of fruit. There's no fruit, but they have a lot of professing. That's the Laodicean condition, all right? So you have a Laodicean condition, you have the fourth angel's message. What else do you need? Oh, okay. You know, this is very amazing. When you look at that time, the 1888, let me go to notes. I don't have any questions yet, so let me look at my notes. I have to look at the notes. In the 1888 election, all right? 1888 election, Republican Benjamin Harrison defeated the incumbent Democratic President Grover Cleveland. Okay? Okay, so the Grover Cleveland was running to become the next, he was the president, but he wants to continue to become the president, to remain president. But he was defeated by Benjamin Harrison. Okay? All right, what does that mean? Okay, I want you to figure out, what does that mean? When the incumbent loses to a newcomer.
Change in power.
Right, that's a change in power, but what does that mean? To think of French Revolution, what is that?
A
Rise in populism, right? What do they want? They don't want the elite anymore, because the president who wants to continue to being the president, he's the elite, right? They don't want him. We want a new president. All right. Well, it's the rise of populism. Yeah, the people don't want the elite, the one that has been reigning, the one that has been ruling, right? Okay. During that presidency, during that presidential election, this is the 1888, the winning candidate won less popular votes than the electoral college.
Same thing.
Oh. What does that mean? It usually means that the regular people, there's a lot more of the regular people than the richer people, and all these richer people, they actually have the popular vote, yeah, the general. But the electoral college, the regular people, they still win. So it usually represents the rise of populism. Okay, all right. Mob, well, that will eventually lead to mob rule, but that's right. That's really not mob rule yet. But you start to see that in 1888. Okay, so if 1888 lines up to 2001, which presidential election is very close to 2001? Who got elected in 2001? George Bush, right? George Bush got elected. How did George Bush win?
Oh, I know this. It was like the voting was flawed or something.
It's a hanging tad.
The hanging chad. What happened to the hanging chad? How did?
It took them 2 years.
Right. How did George Bush win?
The hanging
Because at that time, his brother was
Yeah.
governor of Florida, right?
Right.
And then it was the issue of the hanging tad. You know,
Right.
something like that.
Did he win? Did he win the popular vote?
No.
He did not win the popular vote. He won the electoral college,
Yeah.
just like, well, just like Trump, but just like Benjamin Harrison.
Because it took 2 years for Gore to concede.
Yeah. See the what?
hanging
Yeah, Bush won the electoral college, but lost actually the popular vote. Okay, what was the significance? Who did Bush beat? Al Gore. And who was Al Gore? He was the incumbent vice president. So what did the people want to do? They don't want the vice president that had been ruling for 8 years. They don't want the same thing. They wanted something new. Do you see that? What does that mean? It's a rise in populism. Right? Do you see that?
Just like what's going on in the Philippines.
So in 1888 is the same thing like the 2000, right? This is, when I saw that, I go, I can't believe this. This is the same history being repeated. Okay, now here's another important thing to, there's a sociologist, a professor of sociology, who started counting. If somebody wins by popular vote and somebody loses by popular vote by wins an electoral college, he counted when what happened in 2000, all right? Gore won 127 million and Bush won 143 million. Ooh. Right? Of the counties, all right? But this is what the states, Bush won 29 states, Gore won 19, all right? Here's another one. The murder rates of those places, of those counties. Gore won 65, and there's 6.5 murders for 100,000 residents, and Bush, there's 4.1 murders per 100,000. So there's more lower class people in those in those counties that Gore won. All right, there's another one here that's very interesting. In the 2000 U.S. presidential election, George Bush won most of the states that are net beneficiaries of federal spending programs. Right? Bush, the winner, won for in the population where they are they are the recipients of federal spending beneficiaries. And Al Gore won most of the states that are net contributors to federal spending. So it's the regular people, right? So actually Bush was endorsed by the regular people because they didn't like the Clinton years, right? And Al Gore kind of represented the Clinton years. They wanted a change. This is populism, right? Okay. All right. So we have a rise in populism, right? Right? So before Jesus comes, there's going to be a rise in populism. We have to see that. This is amazing. Okay. Do you know Henry W. Blair? He proposed the Blair Bill. What is the Blair Bill and what year was that proposed in? 1888, actually. In the same year, in 1888, in the Senate of the United States, May 21, 1888, Senator H.W. Blair from New Hampshire, introduced the bill to the 50th Congress, was referred to the Senate Committee on Education and Labor. And the bill read, "A bill to secure to the people the enjoyment of the first day of the week, commonly known as the Lord's Day, as a day of rest, and to promote its observance as a day of religious worship." Right? So you have to have a Sunday law in the works. Before Jesus comes, you have to have the government already have the Sunday law in the works. All right? And that already started in 1888. And who went to the A.T. Jones went there and represent the Adventist Church and protesting, right? All right. By the way, did the Jews send anybody there? Well, they're the most foremost Sabbath keepers. They didn't send anybody. be enacted by the Senate and the House of Representatives of the United States of America in Congress assembled, that no person or corporation or agent, servant, or employee of any person or corporation shall perform or authorize to be performed any secular work, labor, or business to the disturbance of others, works of necessity, mercy, and humanity accepted. Okay. Nor shall any person engage in any play, game, or amusement, or recreation to the detriment of others on the first day of the week, commonly known as the Lord's Day. Wow. If this is going to happen again in our time, you know what? I think the NFL is going to play on another day.
They're playing Saturday.
They play Saturday.
Oh yeah, but there's going to be a time when they can't play on Sunday. Or during any part thereof, in any territory, district, vessel, even a vessel, even on a ship, or place subject to the exclusive jurisdiction of the United States. Wow. Nor shall it be lawful for any person or corporation to receive pay for labor or service performed or rendered in the violation of this section. This is the Sunday law. And it already happened in 1888. Jesus could have come at that time. You know, and Jesus is going to come. So if at that time this failed, what's going to happen? At that time this failed, what's going to happen this time? It's a chiastic mirror. It didn't happen at that time, it's going to happen this time. It's going to pass. This will pass. Pretty amazing. 1888, right? That's the same year that the fourth angel's message was given. That lines up to 9/11. So it's got to be that at 9/11 there has to have been a Sunday law in the works, but it hasn't gone through. But it will go through, right? Wow. Okay. All right. Alonzo T. Jones. All right. The bill was defeated in April 1889. RC, this is what you remember.
Oh, no, because
1889. It was defeated.
Congress.
He went to Congress in
January.
January 1889. Right. So January 1889, he went to Congress, and he his defense for the Sabbath was very good. You got to read what he said about it. It was pretty good. Right. Okay. He argued that the state had no right to dictate the conscience of the citizen or judge whether a citizen's action is religious or unreligious. It can only judge it's civil or whether it's civil or uncivil. Right. That was his judgment. Let's see. The Jews sent no representatives. The Seventh-day Baptists argued that they should not be compelled to only work 5 days. Okay, we don't work on the Sabbath, and then now you say we can't work on Sunday also. But the Bible says you have to work on, how many days does the Bible say you have to work? 6 days. Wait a minute, then we're going against the Bible, because now you're compelling us that to only work for 5 days. Wait a minute, the Bible says that you have to work for 6 days. Okay, all right. Let's look at the 1892 election. Well, there's not really that much that happened at 1892. I don't think that's prophetically significant. But this was the incumbent Republican Benjamin Harrison. So Benjamin Harrison was defeated. This is kind of unusual, because this is the only time that an ex-president ran again. You know, he used to be a president. He lost. And then later on, he came back and ran again, and he won again. So he became president not in 2 consecutive terms, but separate.
So
He lost it sometime before. So Grover Cleveland became the 24th president. You know, pretty amazing. Anyway, I don't think that's I can't find that there's any significance to that, but it's just a fact that was pretty unusual. Right, 1892. Okay, what happened the year after? there's a big panic of 1893. The big panic of 1893 was the worst depression in the United States had ever experienced up until that time. The worst depression. Okay, so what does that mean for us? There's gonna be a big economic collapse. There's gonna be a big economic collapse. At that time, there was a big panic of 1893, right? It had it started with the bankruptcy of the Philadelphia and Reading Railroad, you know. So people started taking out their money from the banks, all right? And the unemployment rate was 19%. All the 15,000 companies went into bankruptcy. 500 banks failed, all right? Yeah. It's pretty amazing. And one thing that was pretty amazing was that President Grover Cleveland had to borrow $65 million in gold from Wall Street banker J.P. Morgan. America did not even have any more gold to back up their money. He had to borrow from J.P. Morgan, from the private sector, you know, just like the French Revolution. French Revolution, they were so bankrupt that they actually had to borrow money from the elites, from the rich people. Yeah. Okay. All right, so there's a panic. So there's a economic collapse. All right, so we now see how this, you know, could have happened, because all these things have to lead up to that Jesus would have come, you know. All these conditions we have to look for, right, in our time. Okay. Then comes 1896 election. This election is if you look at it very closely, it's between two presidential candidates, William McKinley and William Jennings Bryan. William and William. What is that?
Doubling.
There's a doubling. All right. There's a doubling. All right. And this happens 8 years after 1888. So 8 years after 1888, you know, that's like, there's prophetic significance about that, because this will place it at the midnight cry, right? Now, the thing about William McKinley is quite amazing, because this, we're going to read it. We're going to read it about William McKinley. One other note is that William Jennings Bryan, these politicians, you know, when they got sick, where would they go? Which hospital would they go to?
Sanitarium.
The Battle Creek Sanitarium. William Jennings Bryan, when he was sick, he went to Battle Creek Sanitarium. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, they have it there because they're celebrating the how many years and they have all
Got
their
a
stuff
plaque.
got treated at the sanitarium.
Oh yeah, yeah. But there's, yeah, Eleanor Roosevelt went there. Yeah, but anyway.
Amelia Earhart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But William Jennings Bryan, when he got sick, he went to Battle Creek. Okay, what's the significance of this? What's the significance of this election? Okay, we're gonna read it right here. All right. This is what A.T. Jones wrote, right? A.T. Jones wrote in 1896, after the election. We have before mentioned the fact that on both sides in the late political campaign, right, between William Jennings Bryan and William McKinley, there were frequent mention made of the French Revolution. Each side charged the other with showing alarming characteristics of that notable period of history. Each side was saying that you're behaving like Robespierre or something like that. You're having the same characteristics of the French Revolution. Only less remarkable than the national atheism that was developed in French Revolution was the development of a one-man power. So this William McKinley was behaving like a dictator, As Napoleon was returning from Notre Dame after the ceremonies had marked the conclusion of the Concordat, that's 1801, he exclaimed, "Now the French Revolution is finished, because now no more need for French Revolution, because I'm now your dictator." Napoleon could see plainly enough that he was the logical result of at least one series of events. So the French Revolution led to him becoming the dictator. And the situation that found its logical result in a Napoleon in France 100 years ago has today in the United States its counterpart in more than one of its phases. So we are seeing what happened during the French Revolution happening also in America. So what does that mean? That the conditions of the French Revolution will also have to happen to America in our time. It happened at that time in around 1888 to 1896, when Jesus could have come. All right? This is evident from the fact that it was apparent to both sides and was much emphasized in the discussions by the leaders in the late campaign. Nor was this seen only by men in this country. It was seen and pointedly commented on by French thinkers also. Even the French were saying that you guys are behaving like people during the French Revolution. Just before the national conventions were held, the Paris Figaro is the newspaper in Paris, remarked upon the issues that were prominent in the campaign, said, "Are the Americans in quest of a Napoleon? Are they moving in the direction of the dictatorship?" This is what the French are saying. The French just had finished their French Revolution. They know what it means to live under a dictator. And they say, "You Americans, are you moving in the direction of a dictatorship? The precursor of demagogic or military despotism?" What's a despot? Despotism. It's the ruler by a king without any opposition, a despot. Yeah. In the case of a people which hitherto has made it a point of honor to renovate and not to follow history's general laws, there will certainly be unexpected yet possible evolution. You're supposed to be the ones that innovate. You have a new constitution. We've never seen any constitution like that. You're supposed to innovate. Instead, you're following the footsteps of what the French did. This is what the French people actually looked at America and said, "You guys are doing what we did." Right? Okay.
A.T. Jones,
A.T. Jones quoted Paris Figaro that the French were accusing of Americans being like what the French were during the French Revolution. Right? So what's the point? The point of showing is that the French Revolution was about to happen there, but it's going to happen in our time too, right? Because Jesus was about to come, and the conditions of French Revolution was already seen in America at that time, right? In 1896. Certainly, if any are qualified to discern such symptoms, the French are the ones. Yeah, they just went through the French Revolution. To those thinkers, the issues involved in the French Revolution are as familiar as to those of the American Revolution to American thinkers, right? And when these men, being today upon the very spot and among the memorials of the French Revolution, can look across the ocean in such a distance, see that which causes them with interest to ask, are the American in quest of a Napoleon? Are they moving in a direction of dictatorship, the precursor of demagogy or military despotism? Surely it is time for the people of this country to ask themselves whether they had not better begin seriously to consider the situation. Wow. Okay. All right. Yeah. Nor is it symptoms that suggest that the French Revolution alone that this writer sees here. He sees also that which is suggestive of the course of the Republic of ancient Rome. Oh, so now what does he compare the French Revolution and America like? It's like ancient Rome. You know what? you guys are behaving like Tiberius. Upon this, he remarks that if America liked to indulge in the luxury of passing in a century and a half at most through all the stages to be found in the history of Roman, that is her affair. You know, if you want to go through, you go, you know, in 150 years, you look like you are going through the same thing that happened in Rome. The Caesarian tendencies, the tendencies of the Caesars, like Caesar, Augustus, and Tiberius, which have shown themselves too often in the United States during the last 30 years. Can you imagine? A.T. Jones is comparing the, you know, the political arena during that time with the time of the Caesars. Isn't this what we just did too? We compared Tiberius with what happens in America now. We're comparing it with the Caesars, right? Yeah. A.T. Jones, you know, this guy, he actually brought the fourth angel's message. It was rejected, but he did. He actually was used by God at one time, but eventually he apostatized. Yeah. He apostatized and he followed John Harvey Kellogg. Yeah. Yeah. So A.T. Jones compares the French Revolution to the Caesars of Rome, right? Okay. What happened to William McKinley? Pretty amazing. William McKinley was shot. Now this guy, William McKinley, was the 25th President of the United States. He was assassinated on September 6, 1901, and in a temple of music in Buffalo, New York, while he was shaking hands with Leon Czolgosz. Leon Czolgosz had lost his job during the 1893 panic, and he had become an anarchist. Okay? All right, that's very significant. Anarchist, what is an anarchist? Somebody doesn't believe in any kind of government. You know, there's no need for any government. You don't believe in, it's like mob rule. There's no government. The people will rule themselves, you know, with whatever way they want to do it. It's mob rule. So William McKinley, he was killed by an anarchist. Okay, so just think about this. The Sunday law did not happen. The French Revolution did not happen in America. And the president was killed by an anarchist. So what is going to happen in our time? The Sunday law will happen, and anarchy is going to happen. Because it's chiastic. It didn't happen then, it's going to happen again. So is the mob rule going to happen? Well, we know it's going to happen. Because anarchy, back then anarchy, you know, failed. So that's why he killed. He wanted anarchy to be in America, but it failed. So in our time, anarchy will actually happen. All right. Yeah. Can you imagine? This is so amazing. All right.
So that was McKinley or Bryan that was killed?
This is William McKinley.
McKinley.
William McKinley. All right. Okay. All right. All right. I thought I put this. I decided to put this. This is obviously not from the Bible or the Spirit prophecy, but it's actually quite telling. This is, I guess, a historian in the 18... Yeah, I can't remember when. He wrote about the cycle of bondage.
William Cutler.
Yeah. His name is Alexander Tyler. A Scottish history professor at the University of Edinburgh had this to say about the fall of the Athenian Republic some 2,000 years prior. A democracy is always temporary in nature. Right? America is a democracy. But you know, looking back at history, looking at the Athenian Republic, which was a democracy, it could not last. Why? It simply cannot exist as a permanent form of government. a democracy will continue to exist up until the time that voters discover that they can vote themselves generous gifts from the public treasury. Oh, okay. So now you're going to vote everything that's going to be good for you and not good for the benefit for everybody. So you're going to just vote everything. Pretty soon the public treasury, well, you know what? I deserve food stamps. I deserve Social Security. I deserve, disability. I deserve, you're voting everything. So what's going to happen to the public treasury? What's going to happen to America's money now? When everybody just keeps on, I deserve this, I deserve that. This is democracy. I can vote this. Pretty soon, it's going to go bankrupt, right? From that moment on, the majority always votes for the candidates who promise the most benefit from the public treasury, with the results that every democracy will finally collapse after loose fiscal policy. Yeah, because they keep giving things for the people, right? Pretty soon the government is going to go bankrupt. And then, which is always followed by a dictatorship. Oh boy, you see this? It's kind of like the same thing that happened in Athens 2,000 years ago. This is pretty amazing. When you rationally think about it, it makes sense. It absolutely makes sense. The average age of the world's greatest civilizations from the beginning of history has been about 200 years. During those 200 years, these nations always progressed through the following sequence. Or here's the sequence. This is very amazing. This is quite amazing. This is not biblical. This is just somebody observing, a historian observing what happened during during 2,000 years of the democratic nations. What happened to these democracies?
200 years.
2,000 years of democracy. Yeah, but it usually only lasts about 200 average. Some more, some less. Okay, this is the guy. All right. So from bondage to spiritual faith. All right. So when you're under bondage, then you have spiritual faith. All right. And then from spiritual faith to great courage. From courage to liberty. From liberty to abundance. From abundance to complacency. From complacency to apathy. From apathy to dependence. From dependence back to bondage.
Was Tyler who wrote that?
No, it was actually Hitler. Hitler who did that. And then Alexander. Yeah. Then Alexander.
It is pretty amazing. So the natural progression of the democracy will eventually end up in a dictatorship. You just look at history and that's what's going to happen. It's amazing. Yeah. Pretty amazing. It really makes sense. Right? You just vote in all the benefits for yourself, and everybody votes like that. And pretty soon they become dependent on the government, and then it's going to go bankrupt. Right?
Yeah, that's pretty good. Here's a circle on
Yeah? Yeah.
Abraham was
use
there.
that one.
I didn't use that. I got this from another site. I got it from another site, but it's basically the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Eberhard was the one who
So,
pulled it up.
so when we say that this country is going to move to a dictatorship, it's proven by history already.
History
Yeah.
repeats.
It's proven by history. History will repeat itself. Is there anything new under the sun?
Nope. That's what the wise man said.
There is nothing new under the sun.
Son.
Pretty amazing. Okay. All right. So this is the French Revolution. 1773, the abolishment of the Society of Jesus, which is Jesuit order, right? There's not much persecution up until that time. And 1789, so 1789, they made a constitution. And this is the rise of Robespierre. then he wanted to change the country for the better. He wanted to get rid of the bondage that the French people had been under the papacy and the monarchy of the Louis, right? There's so many Louis that have been, Louis 14th, 15th, 16th. They just drained the whole public treasury, right? They got tired of Louis and the papacy, so they rebelled, right? And what was the reaction of the Pope? He condemned it, right? But then they killed the king, they killed the queen, they killed the priests and the nuns, they hanged everybody. Eventually they started hanging all their enemies, and they started a mob rule right here, right? Yeah. In the meantime, they were in a public, the country was in big debt. There's a big financial crisis, right? And they've been in war with other countries here. They killed everybody, and this is the reign of terror right here. They're in the middle of their reign of terror. They were banning religion, banning the Bible, burning the Bible, and getting rid of all the churches, killing all the priests and the nuns, and then executing them at the guillotine, and sending them away to Guyana or something like that. French Guyana. Yeah, French Guyana. Guyana, yeah. In the middle of that, of banning the Bible, up until the time that they restored it with a decree, was 3.5 years, which is 1260. During that time, here is when Napoleon became the commander-in-chief of the army, right? And then he went to war. And when he conquered a lot of the allies of Europe, he had the military power to go to Italy and take down the Pope, right here. 1799, basically he came back and he declared himself the ruler, and then he became the emperor. So the French Revolution started in 1789 to around 1799. That's the 10-year history of secular French Revolution. So you have the French Revolution, secular. But what is hidden in here is also another history. There's a nine-year history. 1789, with that starting of the Constitution, until 1798. There's this 9-year history here, with the 3.5 years of the end, which starts from the Reign of Terror until the time of Napoleon. All right. This 9-year history, you can connect it with the story of the last king of Israel. He also had a 9-year history. At the end of his reign, there was also kind of like a revolution also. All right. Okay. But anyway, so we'll look at what happened to America. All right. America here at the Boston Tea Party in 1773. And this is Paul Revere. All right. The 1787 U.S. Constitution was written. And then after that, they added the 10 Bill of Rights, right? So there's a 10 right here. But this 10 also symbolizes the what? The 10 presidents before George Washington. George Washington became and he was the commander-in-chief. George Washington was the commander-in-chief here, and Napoleon is the commander-in-chief here. George Washington is the military leader of the American Revolution, and here he's the military leader that brought down the papacy. Okay, George Washington, the first U.S. president under the current U.S. Constitution, right? Okay, and then when we line that up, we will see that in 1888 was when when 1888 is when the Blair Bill came. The fourth angel's message should have come, but had come, but was rejected. The Blair Bill was in 1888. There's a panic here. Obviously, there's economic collapse right here. There's a panic, 1893. 1896 was when the dictator, the conditions of French Revolution, which was the time of William McKinley that campaigned against William Jennings Bryan. So that's kind of like the midnight cry right there, right? Because there's a doubling. All right, so that's 9/11. Falls right there. So since 9/11, because at 9/11 there was a constitution change, right? How was the constitution changed at 9/11? Patriot Act. Patriot Act took away the rights of people for their freedom of, I guess, freedom of privacy. Anything that taking away the rights of people is from the Constitution is a step towards the Sunday Law. Right. So here is the 1789, right? And the Sunday Law was already being started here. So we can see that actually the Sunday Law somewhere is already being planned. We just don't know it, but it will happen, right? And this is the midnight, and this is where the midnight cry happens. So there's going to be a bloodshed and a civil war that's going to happen around midnight and midnight cry, right? The French Revolution history we have to see, and we can see it in the history of America in 1888 to 1896, where Ellen White already said that Jesus could have come at that time, because all the conditions would have met. You know, there's the perfect storm. That's like the if only they did not reject the 1888 message, it could have gone forward, right? And that's the closed door. This is basically where the Sunday Law would have come in, right? Okay. All right, let's see what else. Oh, and this is the symbol of the United Nations, the 10. So there's a 10 and a 1. Then the 10 and then the first. And the last and the 10. So 1 and a 10, 10 and a 1, 1 and a 10.
It's a mirror.
Yeah, it's a mirror. So these things you can see, these things are written down for us so that we will know what is going to happen in our time. Because we're living right at this time right here. Right? This time. This is where we're living, just before midnight. We're living just before midnight, prophetically, right? Right. So these things are ahead of time for us. Oh, we have to get ready. Okay. All right. You know, I guess I'm kind of stopping early. I think I should stop here. All right. Yeah. Because this pretty much, I still have another comparing with another line of what's going to happen, and it's essentially what happens in Rwanda.
Oh, no way.
So we'll do Rwanda next week.
Yeah.
Right, and how that fits. Okay. So we'll, because that's kind of our time, you know. We have to learn from what happened at Rwanda. That's going to show us what's going to happen in this time period. Because from 1888 to 1896, you can put 1901 here somewhere, because anarchy was not successful, right? Anarchy was not successful. These things are kind of like the chiastic mirror. These things that did not happen here will happen here, right? Yeah. But next week I'm going to go to the genocide in Rwanda and put that together and see what can we learn of the conditions in Rwanda that could tell us about the conditions that's happening here. All right. Okay. And that is the more sure word of prophecy. Okay. All right. We're ending early, but it's okay.